Well after dark, Yorin gathers together the shadowy members of Steelshod. He tells them the plan. After the long day of fighting, even the members of the company least likely to be on the front lines are exhausted. Chauncey nervously sharpens his knives, stuttering his assent every time Yorin asks if everyone understands. Prudence checks the mechanisms of the elegant little crossbow she received as a gift from Giancarlo months ago. Amos leans against the ruined husk of a building, catching a quick breather. Kara watches Yorin intently, making a few suggestions of her own. Hubert, too, has a few thoughts on what their targets might be. Yorin has a hope of coming across a sleeping, wounded Terbjornsson and ending him. But he knows it's unlikely. To find the High Jarl of the Svards and get past what is sure to be a large number of guards. So, he'll settle for ending the army's ability to siege. Hubert has provided a few vials of poison. Top priority is to taint the food and water supply. Diluted, the poison isn't likely to kill many, but hopefully it will give them a vicious bout of dysentery. They also hope to target the horses that Terbjornsson's elites ride, and, of course, any champions they find. Hubert, Prudence, Chauncey, and Yorin will form the actual infiltration team. Kara and Amos will stay outside the perimeter, take overwatch positions, and cover their escape. The other part of the mission falls to the rest of Steelshod. Alexander, the Mounted Corps, and some of the Cadian Knights. They will ride out of the East Gate and conduct a moonlight charge, smashing through the disorganized folk from Dinham, and causing as much stir as they can. They are to wait until an hour after Yorin's team has left. Their primary goal is to provide a distraction, a cover by which the infiltration team can escape. They plan to retreat before the battle is truly joined. Alexander, despite Agrippa's protesting and his own aching ribs, prepares to mount up with his men. The stealth team moves out. Creeping past the Dynamites is trivial. Their sentries range from haphazard to non-existent. Terbjornsson's camp is considerably more difficult, however. Tight, regular patrol sentries, a clean, organized camp. Much more so than Yorin expected from Svards. Hubert and Yorin have come prepared, however. They're dressed in the garb of fallen Svardic warriors, and Hubert, with his polyglot skill, speaks Svardic well enough to pass for native. Yorin speaks in grunts and laughs, and they manage to bullshit their way past the sentry patrol. Worth mentioning here, Yorin's player has bad streaks of poor luck. He's always trying to scrape up advantage somehow to counter this. And way back in the beginning, after a comedy of errors where he was trying to play a prank on Perrin and Prudence and kept fucking up, he picked his very first tier, called Hot Shot. Hot Shot is a once-per-session ability, where Yorin can declare a rogue goal, like poison the food stores in the enemy camp, or slip a dead fish under Prudence's bed, and he gets advantage on all skill checks made that further that goal, so long as they are not directly combat-related or combat replacements, for example, stealth rolls to kill someone. If things develop and the goal is not the full scope of what he wants anymore, oh well. Hotshot is a hugely powerful ability, but one that leaves me with a lot of discretion to say, that goal is too broad, or that isn't really furthering your goal directly. A great example of the kind of trick up Yorin and Alexander's sleeves to help achieve some of their great successes. While Hubert and Yorin speak to the sentries, Chauncey and Prudence creep through the hole in the patrol pattern this causes. They strike out towards the north side of the camp, while Hubert and Yorin take the south. Once inside, they proceed to scout the camp. They determine that Terbjornsson's camp has another camp within it, one that is even more regimented and tightly locked down than the outer perimeter. At this point, Yorin accepts that Terbjornsson is likely outside his reach. The horses aren't difficult to find, though. A huge, simple corral has been constructed on one edge of the camp. They slip into a storage tent nearby. They sabotage some straps and supports on the saddles, but they don't want to cause a stir yet, so they leave the horses themselves alone. They stumble across the paths of some Svards staying up late, throwing dice by a campfire. The Svards are drunk and beckon them over. Hubert leaps on this sword for Yoren, since he knows he can maintain their cover much more effectively. He trundles over to the Svards, laughing and joking in Svardic, and joins them in their game. Yoren slips away. He ducks between two tents and sheds his bulky and loud Svardic garb. He nearly walks into another Svard as he steps out. It's only quick reflexes that save him from an alarm. He darts forward and slides his steel dagger through the Svard's ribs, muffling the short-lived grunts and gasps with his free hand. Then he looks around. He picks a large tent that's close by at random, and drags the corpse over to it. He has to work quickly. A slit in the side of the tent and a peek through confirms darkness within. Just some smoldering embers in a small fire pit, and the sounds of snoring. Yoren widens the slit and ducks inside. If he can quietly kill off the snorers and stash the extra body here, he should avoid any alarm until daybreak. Once inside, he realizes the snoring is much louder than he first thought. And this tent, though large, features just one pile of furs that serves as a bed. Even in the incredibly dim light from the fire's ash-covered coals, Yoren sees the prone body of a naked bearsark rising and falling with each loud breath. He sneaks closer, dagger still in hand, then stops. One bed, but not one person. The bearsark is entangled with two smaller figures, also naked. Middish women, from the looks of them, and one of them is staring at Yoren. Her wide, white eyes reflect the dim light, but she doesn't wake the bearsark, or sound any kind of alarm. Yoren walks faster. He positions himself at the head of the bedrolls, kneels down, and draws his blade across the bearsark's throat in a single smooth motion. The bearsark's eyes snap open as he gasps out a single breath. Blood gushes from the wound. The bearsark twitches a few times, one arm rising, then falling back to the furs. The woman clambers out of bed, wakes her companion with a finger to her lips. They both look to Yoren, who is already ducking back outside. He drags the other corpse into the tent and dumps it beside the bearsark. "You've come to save us?" whispers the first woman. "Thank God," says the second, too loudly. Yoren shushes them. He confirms what he already knows. They are Cadian women, taken from farms and homesteads, held at the pleasure of the Svards. He considers his options, strips the dead Svard, and tells one of them to take his garb, tells them both to wait. In short order, he recovers his discarded Svardic clothes, and found a third set, off of an unfortunate drunken Svard that went out alone to piss, and never made it back to his tent. Once he has all three of them dressed up as Svards, they slip out into the camp and make for the stables. The women aren't half as subtle as Hubert. Yoren has to leave a trail of corpses in their wake. Another man that got too close, two half-asleep Svards watching the horses. He gets to the horses, and they mount up. He regrets not being able to send the horses running wild, but he doesn't know how far along the others are, and doesn't want to rouse the camp just yet. So, they just start riding out, calm and purposeful, as if they belong there. They nearly slip past the sentries, but one of the patrols calls out to them in Svardic. Yoren just keeps riding. The patrol shouts again. He sounds agitated. Not a good sign. Yoren discreetly palms one of his daggers. One of the women calls something back, in Svardic. Yoren sees the lead member of the patrol widen his eyes and take a step back. He says something in response, clearly placated, and waves them on. Once they've cleared the perimeter, Yoren sidles up to the woman. He asks what she said. She repeats it, and admits that she has no idea what she means. but she'd overheard the Svards say it in a commanding tone when challenged, and it usually got the patrols to leave them alone. The only word Yoren recognizes is Jarl, Svardic word for king or warlord, Terbjornsson's proper Svardic title. Once they're a ways clear of the camp, Yoren tells them to shed the Svardic gear and head for Kilchester. They will be seen to there. The women are shaken, nervous, but they nod and thank him for his help. Yoren shrugs off their thanks awkwardly and turns to go back and try to re-infiltrate and finish the various tasks he had set for his team. Shouts erupt from Terbjornsson's camp. Horses riding in all directions from the stables, and quite a few of the awake and alert patrols converging on that area. Closer to them, the dynamites and scattered pockets of Svards begin rousing as well. Yoren mutters a curse. He can't leave the women now, and he has to trust that his people can handle themselves. So, he leads the two women back down towards Kilchester. He's about halfway back when he sees the cavalry raid bearing down on the half-readied camps. It's been less than an hour, but presumably Alexander heard the commotion and moved the timetable up. He rides to meet them, announces himself, gets a few knights to peel off and escort the women back to the keep. They strike the camps, cutting down dynamites, Svards, Kregars, anyone who emerges from their tents and bedrolls to fight. The melees are fast, hectic, and go poorly for the defenders, but it doesn't take long to see larger forces massing around Terbjornsson's camp. And most of the horses have been rounded up, many of them mounted. Steelshod and Lord Beck, who leads the Cadian contingent, take this as their cue to retreat. Yoren has no concept of how well the raid actually went. He failed on all accounts. He recognizes that he had to help the women, to be true to the man he wishes to be, but the strategic implications are poor. The rest of the stealth team trickles in. Kara and Amos confirm that they killed a dozen sentries and lamed half that many horses. They also covered Hubert's escape. Hubert is happy to say he tainted a good portion of their liquor supply. Prudence and Chauncey are the last to arrive, bareback astride a horse stolen from the enemy camp. The good news is that they scattered the horses, poisoned some food stores, and killed half a dozen Svards, and one of the Vartror, the black bearskin bearsarks. The bad news is that Chauncey, clinging to Prudence's back on the horse, is sporting a bearsark-sized arrow out of his lower back. Chauncey's legs and the horse are both soaked in blood, and the young man is barely clinging to consciousness. Thank you for tuning in to Steelshod, a series by Mostly Rights, narrated by Tailforge. You can find every chapter in text format, as well as character sheets, setting information, maps, and rule documents on the Steelshod tabletop system in the link below. If you'd like to support the channel, you can pop down to the description and use the Patreon link for recurring donations, the PayPal.me link for one-time donations, the Teespring link for shirts with the incredibly cool background art by Nobody, or use the DriveThruRPG affiliate link the next time you're looking to try a new system. If you'd like to support the author, you can find Steelshod merch on the MostlyRights.com store, or donate to the Mostly Rights Patreon, which are both linked on reddit.com/r/mostlyrights down below.